So, hi, I'm Jeff Leisawitz with brownpapertickets.com. I'm also the author of the book Not Effing Around, the no bullshit guide to getting your creative dreams off the ground, right?
Right?
I love talking to creative people. Bernie Resnick, that's you, man. How's it going?
Things good, never better, Jen.
Awesome. So tell me, what do you do? What do you have to do with creativity and the arts and all this stuff?
Short version is I'm a musician that went to law school. I'm a double bass player. I'm classically trained. I still play, even though I'm in my 50s now. I've been playing in community symphonies and professional orchestras for 30 years. And when I'm not making music by being a songwriter or a musician, I'm an entertainment lawyer and I represent people with talent. It doesn't matter to me whether the client throws a ball through a hoop or writes a song or writes a screenplay or takes a photograph. If the client's blessed with talent, my job is to guide them through the dangerous world that is the entertainment industry and help them emerge on the other side with their wallet intact.
Fantastic. Good one. So, what do you love about doing this, both the professional side of the legal aspect and the creative part?
One of the things I like professionally about this job is that it's never boring. I keep a calendar, but it's in pencil because by 10:30 every morning, all my plans have been thrown up in the air and it's like playing a game of 52 pickup and I have to react to what's happening out there amongst the clients. So it's never boring. And another thing I like about it is that I get paid to listen to music, which I would do anyway. So it's a great gig in that sense because I get to use my creative skills in selecting who I think has the best chance to be world famous, while at the same time doing the brain work of being their lawyer and helping them draft and negotiate deals and strategize for their career. Creatively, I like it because every day is different and because I can apply some of my own personal creativity to the deals that I'm making for the clients.
Yeah, cool. Very good. Thank you. So, you've been at this for a while, both as a musician and as a lawyer. And you're a successful guy. Look at all those gold records and all that stuff behind you, right? What have you learned from your success?
I've learned a lot of things, and every day I keep learning. Um, I think I could give you a long list, but let me just take a few that come to mind, if that's okay. First thing I've learned is as an individual, as a executive, you have to understand your strengths and your weaknesses personally. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. And there's nothing wrong with figuring out what things you're not good at and delegating those to people who are better. I have found over the years that I'm a decent draftsman, but my associate attorney, who happens to also be my wife, is a much better draftsman than I am. So the real complex, thorny legal documents that need to be very cleverly written, I tend to give to her because she'll be faster, more accurate, and do a better job for the client. While I am better at doing the big picture deal points, she's better at the nitty gritty of actually drafting. It's just an example. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and not be afraid to delegate. Second thing I've learned is when you're hiring people, you should hire the smartest people you can find. I try to hire people who are every bit as smart as I am, if not smarter. I encourage people that work at our firm to be independent and to use their own initiative. And I like it when they're very bright because I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, there's usually a problem with this deal. So I like to be surrounded and have surround me people who are very intelligent, people who are studious. The other thing that I've learned is that if you want to be successful in your career, you shouldn't have a job. A job is when you punch the clock and wait for the whistle to blow at the end of the day. That you can do whether you've had 2 years of school or 20 years of school. But if you like what you do and you're passionate about it, and you have a personal interest in it, then it's not a job, it becomes a career. Then you don't need an alarm clock or someone standing behind you to kick you out the door to go to work. You're happy to go because you're passionate about it. And I've been fortunate enough to get into a business where I have a personal interest. So I find that I don't mind doing the homework, following what's going on in the industry, staying involved and meeting the people because I'm curious about music. I love music. After family, it's the most important thing in my life. And I would listen to it anyway So being able to combine that with my job, I think makes me better at it.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic answer. And it's a huge difference between a job and a career, right?
Absolutely.
If you love what you do, you're going to do it anyway.
That's right. And I think you'll do better at it because you'll have the motivation to study it. Because in order to be really good at something, you need to put in the time. I don't care whether it's being a bass player, being a lawyer, being an author of a book like yourself. You're going to need to put in, I would expect, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 hours of time to really become expert at something. Sure, you may be able to get around the guitar or a piano if you play an hour a day, 5 days a week for about 6 months. Okay, but that's only a couple of hundred hours. If you really want to be expert at the piano, you need thousands of hours so that it becomes second nature to you. For a lawyer who works an average of 2 to 2,200 hours, 2,000 to 2,200 hours a year, we're talking 5 to 10 years to really become expert in something and to be a true savant at the field in which you choose and to know most of the ins and outs. And I think you need to be willing to put in that kind of time to develop that type of expertise. It's hard to be an expert at something if it's just your side job or your side business. So try to find a business that's not your side business, but your 24/7 job, and be willing to put the time into it and to be a lifelong learner. I've been doing this for a little under 30 years. And there are requirements for lawyers, for example, that require us every year to take what we call continuing legal education credits. That means I've got to stay abreast on what's happening with the law and take at least 12 hours worth of credits per year to learn about what's happening to keep my license current to practice law. Well, this year, Jeff, so far, we're in October, and I've done more than 12 credits. I've done about 30 credits this year. And it's not about whether they were cheap or expensive to obtain or the time it took. I was personally interested in every course that I took. And I find that it'll make me a better lawyer at the end of the day because I'm doing it out of personal interest as much as a requirement. So I like to be a lifelong learner. You can't be a lawyer unless you love to read and write. And I do love to read and write, so I don't mind putting in the time to continue to do that. In addition to being a lifelong learner in my field, in law, I also need to do things like to study current events in my field, which means subscribing to magazines, newspapers, reading e-zines, or going to websites, reading blogs, listening to other people who are smart and who are in this field. And I'm a subscriber and a regular reader of, I would say, maybe 36 of these different magazines and blogs. And I spend about an hour every day just reading what's going on in our industry. So imagine I'm spending an hour a day reading, even on weekends, and spending an hour a day managing the business, which is the insurance and tax and personnel issues. And then the rest of the day, I have to actually do the work. But as I said, if you have an interest in it, you don't mind putting in those hours. And I think whatever a person does, in whatever field of endeavor, they have to be willing to be lifelong learners and continue. Otherwise, your knowledge will stagnate and people will pass you by.
Great. So you get a lot of stuff done. You are very NFA. That's pretty obvious. Do you have any do you have any strategies for doing that? Like, how do you keep it all together? How do you organize your tasks? How do you do it?
We could talk for an hour about all the things that I do to stay organized, but I'll give you some tips and some examples. First, I keep a list. I guess you call it a to-do list of things that I need to take care of for the clients, things I'd like to accomplish today. But unlike most people who will do the easy stuff first and put off the difficult stuff, I think about my list and what is going to be the most difficult, most time-consuming, most complicated, most irritating, annoying thing that I don't want to do, and that's the one that goes to number one on the list. If I can do that first thing in the morning, at least I feel like I accomplished something today, and then it's easy and downhill to do the rest. So I keep a list and I try to tick off the most complicated, difficult, troubling one first and foremost. Second, there's an old Chinese attitude, mostly in Hong Kong and Shanghai, that you can't let your problems or your business difficulties overwhelm you. And a lot of people, when they look at the flood of email and phone calls and faxes and people knocking at the door and overnight deliveries every day, they get overwhelmed and they're paralyzed by the sheer volume of things that come in. So you have to learn how to compartmentalize these things and how to put them in the Chinese way in individual boxes and just open the box and take out one problem and one matter at a time and then take care of it and then open the next box. And don't let all of these things so overwhelm you that you become paralyzed. The third thing that I do is I take advantage of the computer programs that come with anybody's computer. By that I mean Google Calendar or Microsoft Outlook. Those programs are set up for time management. So what I do is for each individual client, I set up a Microsoft Word file to keep notes of what's going on with that matter, things I need to take care of, things people have told me. I use the calendaring program to set up reasonable deadlines and to remind myself when it's time to follow up on things. And I keep that information as up to date as humanly possible. And I think if you get into the habit of that simple organizational task of this is a matter I've taken on, this is a reasonable time to complete it, or a reasonable time to expect the other side to come back to me, and then follow up when the computer rings a little bell to remind you and actually do something, you'll find that you'll get stuff taken care of. So there's the little things, taking care of that kind of thing and organizing yourself is very helpful just by taking advantage of the programs that come out of the box. The other thing I do, and I do this at home as well as the office, is I don't let things pile up to the point where I can't find what I need to take care of. And by that, I mean, if I have some things to file, I will file every single day. It takes 2 minutes, but I'll take care of it. I have a friend who's another lawyer, lovely guy, brilliant guy, hates filing, especially hates doing his taxes. He collects his receipts, he collects his incoming monies, his outgoing payments, and every year he calls me freaking out on New Year's Day because his accountant has just told him, I need all the information so I can do your tax filings by end of January. And this guy has to take a day or two off from work to organize a whole year's worth of filing. I never have that problem because each day I spend that 2 minutes organizing the tax files so that on January 1st, I push a button, my accountant gets everything, and I can have a nice cocktail on New Year's Day. So if you do it 2 minutes a day, it doesn't seem that daunting a task. Don't let things pile up. And the best time to do is now. That's the other thing, is that at the end of the day, I try to leave here with 0 emails in my inbox and 0 phone calls that are not returned. Even if I get back to somebody to say, listen, I'm very busy, I've got priority matters, I'm going to need a few days to get back to you, I get back to everybody within 24 hours. That way, it's good client management, good interpersonal relations, and people have a realistic expectation of when they're going to hear from me. And I don't leave the office with a pile of things hanging over my head, only to return tomorrow morning and have 20 more waiting for me, and then I never get to it. So I try to take care of everything the moment it comes in, because the best time to deal with it, in my opinion, is right now. There's no time like the present. So those are some of the things that I try to do to organize myself.
Fantastic. Thank you. Very good advice for anybody, I'm sure. Great. So, in your business and in your creative life, like all of us, we push ahead and occasionally we hit, troubling spots, challenges, failures. What do you do or what have you done to move past those sort of difficult experiences to continue on towards your mission, towards your goals?
Failure is a part of the industry. As I tell all of my clients, we're going to hear a lot of no. We just want the occasional yes. Even the Beatles and Boston and Dave Matthews Band were rejected by record companies before they ultimately got their recording contracts and went on to fame and fortune. So failure is part of our industry. Failure is part of the sports industry. If you fail 7 times out of 10 in baseball, you're good enough to be an all-star because you're hitting a 300 batting average. So you just have to be accepting of the fact that you'll not succeed in everything that you try. And that doesn't mean you stop trying. Sometimes people can channel the energy of failure into increased motivation to succeed. Other times you have to take a step back and think about, why am I being rejected so much? Is there a pattern here? And should I change something in the way I'm approaching this or the way I'm pitching this in order to get a better chance of success? Sometimes it takes some research of the wider industry, no matter what industry you're in, to see whether or not you may be barking up the wrong tree. And that's why you're failing or being rejected. And, that's okay. It's all part of learning, and nothing is stagnant or static in the world. Things always change, especially in the technology and the intellectual property field. So, keeping those things in mind and keeping your passion for whatever you're trying to do in mind, I think you can get beyond failure, but it does require some pretty hard self-examination, and sometimes it requires talking to someone else. So it's a good idea to develop a relationship with a mentor, a trusted advisor. It doesn't have to be somebody who's also in your field. It has to be somebody with some life experience, somebody who's reasonable and sensible and knows you. Talk to that person. And sometimes that person, if they're even outside of your industry, may have a better perspective about why you're not succeeding than someone within your industry. So I've always tried to cultivate a team of mentors that I can go to, male, female, black, white, older, same age as me. And I call upon all of them still to this day for advice. And I try also to give back and to mentor others younger than me who request it for the same reason. And I think if you can develop those kinds of relationships, it'll go a long way to helping you identify how to get beyond whatever's blocking you.
Fantastic and totally true. And of course, you have been a huge mentor for me, so I thank you for that. I always appreciate that.
As a lawyer, there's more to being a lawyer than simply dotting I's and crossing T's. And a lot of times, within my relationship with you, from lawyer to client, or with all of the other 140 or so clients that our firm has, there are times when I'll speak with the client, be it you or someone else we represent, and we don't talk about the business deal at all, because you have to have a feel for the interpersonal relationship of what's going on in this client's life or what's going on in the lawyer's life. And how you get to know people. And in that knowledge and getting to know people, you can sometimes help them beyond words. And it has nothing to do with the present deal that you're looking at, the present contract that you're trying to negotiate. It's more about, why is it that you're in this situation and how can we improve things for you? And you don't learn that simply by only focusing on dotting I's and crossing T's. You learn that by having a drink with somebody, going out for a bite to eat with somebody, or just chatting with somebody about what's going on in her life. And I think it goes a long way to helping others and mentoring others. And that's not just true for lawyers, it's true for any person in a business relationship.
Absolutely. Great answer. Thank you. Sure. So, creative people, no matter what they do, whether it's musicians or actors or writers or anybody, a big component of that is networking, meeting other people, getting your network going. Do you have any tips for people to network? What's a good strategy for people to get out there and network?
I have a good friend who's a successful entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles. Her name is Dina LaPolte. And I love something Dina said to me years ago. She said, no entertainment lawyer ever built a practice sitting at her desk at the office. You have to get out there. And that's true not just in entertainment law, but in most businesses. You need to go out and to meet people. If you want to be a sports agent, you need to go to the college campuses, to the combine for young players who would like to be professionals, the scouting combine. You need to get out there and see what's going on in the minor leagues and meet the players. And this could be true in any field of endeavor that's a creative field. You need to know people and know what's going on. And when you get to know people, you can become a judge of talent, or you can become better connected to those others who might be able to help you. Or you might find in getting to know people, there are ways that your career might be taken in different directions, which might be beneficial to you. So I think you have to get out there. And I'm not afraid to go up to someone I've never met before and introduce myself. My wife is even better than I am. She's amazing. We'll go to a cocktail party, and where most people would stand in the corner and shrink against the wall, she'll say to me, hey, Bernie, we don't know anybody. Let's go meet somebody. Let's go mingle. And she'll just walk up to somebody and start talking to her. And I'm amazed that she can do this. And in that inevitably it will lead to someone we'll want to be in touch with or maybe even do some business with. It's remarkable how that works if you're just not afraid to walk up and say, hi, my name's Bernie. It's nice to meet you. I went to the recording studio about a year ago with a client of mine who is a record producer and another client who's a Grammy-nominated recording studio engineer was there. And the three of us were talking in the studio and knock on the door. Guy walks in. He's got a beard. He's got a pair of glasses similar to the ones you're wearing. He's wearing a hoodie and you can't really see his eyes. He takes the hoodie off and he says, oh, hi, Chris. Hi, Jerome. Hey, I don't know you. I'm Justin. Hi, Justin. I'm Bernie. It was Justin Timberlake, this guy here. Another guy who's not afraid to just say hi to people. And he was a perfectly cool guy, nice to talk with and get to know. And we had a long, pleasant conversation. He wasn't surrounded by an entourage. He had no airs about him. He was a perfectly humble, talented guy, ready to work and ready to make a record, which, as you can see, turned out to become a double platinum record and the biggest selling album of 2013. That's how I met him. And it's just testament to not being afraid to say hello to someone and to put them into your network. Similarly, I ask people for a business card. I know it's old-fashioned. Most people have their business cards on their cell phone now. I have old-fashioned paper business cards, and I'm not afraid to hand them to someone. And when they hand theirs to me, and I always ask for theirs in exchange, what I'll do is I'll write on the back of the card a little bit about when I met them, or what the circumstances were, or what we discussed, or what their dog's name was, or whether they had a dog, or what their wife's name was. And then I will always follow up a day later and say, it was nice to meet you when we talked about X, Y, or Z. Love to continue staying in touch and maybe do some business in the future. And as a result, I have a very, very extensive network of people that I know. The other thing that you can do to increase your network is you can try to, I wouldn't say do it in writing, but in your mind, organize people to try to find connections. And that's just not to benefit you. When I say that, I mean introduce them to each other. And if you can be the person to introduce them to each other, they'll think well of you. So for example, a woman who was a law professor of mine at law school, I just ran into her a week ago. She's about to retire. And she and her husband are moving to the Boston area to be closer to her children and grandchildren. And we live in Philadelphia now. I happen to know another woman who is the head of a library in Philadelphia. She's about to retire. And her husband and her are going to move to the Boston area to get together with her children and grandchildren. So I introduced them to her. And now they're having a conversation without me. And now they each can compare notes about their realtors or neighborhoods they're considering moving to, or just life in general in Boston. And I'm sure all four of those people will get together, the wives and husbands as a couple, and become friends because they're similar types of professional people at similar age and points in their life. And I thought it would be a nice deed to put them all together because they're all nice people. I like all of them, and I'd like to see them hang out together. Now, that does nothing for me immediately, except it might someday let either of these people think well of me and recommend me to a third person. So often I will do that and link people together in my mind, and sometimes actually link them together for real. And I think that if you can do that, you can catalog the folks in your network and find a reason to stay in touch with them, it will do you a good service down the road.
Absolutely. Always good to help people out really in any way that you can.
Paid or to get any involvement or have any business. I just thought that these are people that have something in common. They should know each other and they'll probably like each other. Now, when you do that in your business, even if there's no immediate benefit to you, there is a long-term benefit, which is both will think well of you. Both might recommend you to a third person in the future. Both might say, well, all things being equal, that guy Jeff was pretty cool. He might be good for this. Let me take care and I'll send the deal to him. And I think that's why you do. Maybe it's karma. Maybe it's just a way of doing business in a subtle fashion. But I'm not one of those lawyers that advertises on the back of a public bus. I'm not one of those ambulance chaser kind of lawyers. I don't advertise. It's just word of mouth. doing good deeds, public speaking, having a reputation of doing a good job for clients. That's how I get my business. And it's very old fashioned, but it works. And I think you do that and you keep high standards both to yourself and the way you treat other people, it will come back in a good way to you.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. Thank you. Okay, so you've dealt with tons of creative people in your career, and you're a creative guy yourself. So word on the street has it that being creative has an element of healing to it, or almost a therapeutic element to it. Can you speak to that either for yourself or with your experience with your clients?
Do both. With respect to the clients, often when they're having personal difficulties, I advise them to get back to the studio. I remember when, it was a long time ago, but I remember when the night that the John Lennon was killed, um, a reporter managed to find his former writing partner, Paul McCartney, on the streets of London. And Paul made a flip comment because he was so stunned and in shock about, oh, it was a drag, man. And you thought that he would, say something more erudite and more touching. He was just so stunned by the event of his writing partner being killed that that's all that would come out of his mouth. But what I remembered about that wasn't what he said, but where he was when the reporter found him and where he was going. He was on the way to the recording studio. So here's a guy whose writing partner has just been killed, one of the most famous musicians in the world, incredibly wealthy. And how does he deal with the problem like that? He goes to work. And often when my clients have troubles, I tell them, go write a song about your troubles, or go to the gym if you're an athlete, or go sit down and write some more of your novel if you're a novelist. And I advise people to do what they are best at and what absorbs their passion, because I think that's very therapeutic. For me, personally, it's playing music. I might have a very stressful day. Today, so far, I've had a pretty stressful day. Unexpected things have come up, and some of them were not very pleasant for some of my clients. And it's hard to be the Teflon lawyer and to think that troubles your clients are suffering doesn't affect you. It does. And it kind of bums me out by the end of the day. But I can get lost in my music. And an hour from now, I'll be at symphony rehearsal, playing my double bass with the Mainline Symphony, a local community orchestra. I might not play particularly well, but I assure you that within 15 minutes of starting to play tonight, all of the stress of today will have melted away. And I'll get lost in the music. And I'll feel much better by the end of rehearsal. I may be tired, but I'll feel much more relaxed and my blood pressure will be down. And I'll be ready to go home, have a nice meal, go to sleep, and start again tomorrow fresh with a smile on my face to face a new day. And I think that for me it works, and for a lot of my clients it works. So I think that's a very good way to deal with stress. We all have family stresses, financial stresses, personal stresses in our lives. And people deal with them differently. But I have found over the years that if you can have a hobby or a passion that you can use to release some of that tension, you should continue to practice that hobby. And even if it's something simple or childish, if the end result is that it makes you feel more relaxed and more able to deal with your problems and to at least put them aside for a few hours, it's worth doing. And I encourage lawyers, who is a very high-stress job, I encourage lawyers and doctors and accountants, professionals that I know, to get back into playing the banjo or whatever, bassoon or whatever instrument they played in high school, or whatever they did in high school or college that made them relax and kept them smiling. I encourage them to get back into it. I went for my annual checkup with my doctor yesterday. And first thing I asked him was not how he's feeling or how's my blood pressure. I said, have you been going to your banjo lessons? I know that he has an extremely high-stress job, and he loves playing music, and he's been playing the banjo as a way for him to relax. And he said he had. And when he does, he gets the same result as me, which is relaxation and batteries recharged.
Fantastic. Very, very good advice. Very wise. I agree. Okay, last question. So there are tons of people out there, whether they are musicians, actors, writers, photographers, dancers, on and on and on, who are at point A, wherever they are, and they want to get to point B. I'm wondering what Bernie's NFA bullet points are. What are the steps that people can take to go from where they are to where they want to be? If you could just sort of chunk it down.
It doesn't really matter whether you intend to be a successful author, songwriter, record producer, recording artist, actor, athlete. First of all, you need to take a realistic assessment of the general nature of the industry. What are the opportunities for people to enter the industry? And is there a chance that I might be able to, I'm not saying get rich, but a chance that I might be able to make a living doing this job? And if there's a chance, and you then second, are you willing to dedicate the time and energy necessary, not on a part-time or temporary basis, but as much time as you can dedicate to it, because you're competing with people who are doing it full-time. Do you have the time and inclination to do that enough to give it a real shot? The next thing I tell people is you can try for a little while to become an actor and wait tables at night while you're going to auditions in the daytime or taking acting lessons in the daytime. But you have to be realistic about this because we all need to make a living. So give yourself a reasonable deadline. If I'm not making enough money, making a living doing this in, say, 3 years or 4 years, then I have to find another field of endeavor and just make this a hobby. And then I'll do acting and community theater just for enjoyment, and I won't expect to be paid and make a living at it. So you need to have a reasonable time. And the reason I say that is not because of any other rationale other than you need, as a young person, to give yourself time to save money. If I say anything that's worth remembering from this interview, it's this: the rule of sevens. The rule of sevens is that if you invest money wisely, I don't care if it's $100 or $1,000, if you put money into an investment where after 1 year you can get a 10% return on the money and turn $100 into $110 within a year, interest compounds and that money will double in 7 years. So when I first became a lawyer and passed the bar, I had just turned 20. And I started to save about $100 a week. Okay? It's not a lot of money, but I tried to put away $100 a week. Okay. Sometimes I didn't make it that first year because I needed to pay back my student loans, et cetera. So it really turned out to be about $50 a week. So I was saving around, $2,000 a year the first 3 or 4 years I was a lawyer. Okay. Well, $2,000 when you're 25 at 10% interest over 7 years is $4,000 when you're 32. And it's $8,000 when you're 39. And it's $16,000 when you're 46. And it's $32,000 when you're my age, 53. Then it's $64,000 when you're 61. And then it's $128,000 when it's time to retire at age 67 and a half, which is the government's age where you start to have to take your money from pension funds. So remember, it's not that big a deal to save $50 a week. And if it can turn into $128,000 when you retire, it's worth it. So I tell people, don't spend all of your money when you're young. Start saving money when you're young to let the money work for you instead of you working for the money all your life. So you have to find a way to get yourself in bread and water and put away $50 a week. Maybe it means skipping lunch or not going out to dinner or not smoking a pack of cigarettes, whatever it means. Save that money. So the next thing I tell people after saving their money is that they have to make a realistic, critical assessment, self-assessment of their own talent. Are you better to be a leading man as an actor or a character actor, or are you a behind-the-camera person? So you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, do I look like a leading man? When I look in the mirror, I don't see a leading man. I see a character actor's face. So if I were 23, I would not be auditioning for leading roles because I don't have those kinds of movie star good looks that some other people have. But if I was a good actor, I might be looking for character roles to play the bad guy or to play the sidekick or whatever. You have to do that and be realistic about it because there's nothing wrong with being the bass player in a successful band. You may not make as much money as the lead singer, but you'll make a living. Okay, so you have to be very realistic about your chances and about the chances in the industry. The other thing I tell people is look at the industry as a whole. And the best way to do that in the entertainment field is to look at retail. So have you seen any record stores lately? I haven't seen very many record stores. I don't advise many people to go into the recording industry because there's no retail except for online sales and digital streaming now. If there's no retail, there's less jobs. Whether you do see retail are cell phone companies and computer companies and software companies and cable television, and the intersection between all those companies are incredibly successful companies like Google and Comcast and Apple, and that's why their stock costs $100 to $600 per share, as opposed to some other companies that are not doing very well. So jobs follow the success of the company, which follows the success at retail. So before you think about whether you're going to be the one to be the needle in the haystack or be the successful out of 1,000, you have to make a careful assessment of your own skills and talents, where you fit in that industry, and then look at the industry as a whole and say, is there a job for me down the road? And is it an industry that's growing or shrinking? And if it's a shrinking industry, find something else. There's no shame in that. Okay? If you're a football player, let's face it, there's only about 30 professional teams, and each team has about 53 players. So if you're not one of the 1,500 best football players on the planet, you're not getting a job. So you might as well take the education you got at Colgate or SMU or Penn State or wherever you went and do something else with your life, because the chances are against you. It's not a reflection of your talent. It's sheerly the huge number of people, the large numbers chasing a very small amount of jobs. You have to be realistic about this stuff. And there's no crime in that. There's no shame in that. So I think if you do those things, you can come up with a reasonable plan that you can follow for a couple of years to try to give yourself a chance to make a living. If you expect to be a millionaire, it's pie in the sky. Chances of that happening are very slim. But if you expect instead that if you put enough time in to develop the expertise, you can make a living at this, and it's an industry that's stable or even growing, then I think it makes sense to give it a shot and to put those talents to work. But you've got to be brutally honest with yourself and ask your mentor to be brutally honest with you and not take it personally if they say, I don't think you're leading man material.
Absolutely. Very good advice. And again, more wisdom. I love it. Bernie, thank you a ton for all of your insight and your perspective on all the stuff today. I appreciate it. Everybody watching us, I'm sure, really appreciate it. So thanks a lot.
Welcome. It's been a pleasure, and I'm happy to do it anytime. And best of luck with the project, and best of luck with your book, which you worked hard at, and I think it's terrific. And for those out there that haven't read or purchased Jeff's book, please do so, because you'll learn something from it. I know I did.